Hello, and welcome back to another episode of How to Leave a Cult. I am your host, Brooke Walker. How to Leave a Cult is about a biographical story about me being raised in a religious cult. And I also like to talk about some of the dynamics that happened and understanding the way that control works. And I also uh, like to talk about what I've done to heal so that I can give something beneficial so that people who are following it, if they've been through traumatic religious groups, find ways that they can create the life that they're looking to create. So, thank you for listening. This is season 3. Now, I thought that I would start off by mentioning I've been out for a little while. I haven't recorded any episodes for a minute. And I thought that I would share a little bit about why that is. And just to be very transparent, it is because I needed to go back to therapy. And I think, and I always advocate and tell people that, your mental wellness is really important. And there are so many different resources out there. And if you feel like you need help, then you need to find a resource that works best for you. And, the interesting thing about it, and I think I'll share this before we get into today's episode, is that it can be really challenging to find a therapist that you like, that you feel like is helping you and making sure that they're addressing the needs that you need help with. And I made the mistake this time of the first person I started seeing was not good at dealing with trauma. And when I started, I told her that's exactly what I was doing. And I got like a couple sessions in, and her best suggestion was to do some journaling. Now, if you're dealing with some serious amounts of trauma, that's not going to cut it. And so I share this with you so that you can take this forward so that you can make sure, if you're looking for a professional, that you are advocating for yourself and what it is you need, and that you feel comfortable that if you have a couple sessions with somebody that you go, okay, well, this isn't working, and move on and find somebody else. Don't just stop there. Like, you have every right to find somebody that works for you and that is going to be able to help you. And from there, I made some decisions about, and I tweaked what I was looking for. And I absolutely love the woman who helps me now. And some of what I've been doing as I've been going back is doing EMDR. I'm a big fan of EMDR. I actually hate doing it, to be honest with you, but I'm a big fan of the results that I get from it. EMDR has been really beneficial in dealing with trauma that I have. And if you're not familiar with EMDR, I'm going to kind of explain a little bit about what it is. There's a couple different methods. And so one of them would be a light that's on a screen that goes back and forth, or on something, and your eyes are following that light. Sometimes they also have things you hold in your hand that are buzzing bilaterally. So it buzzes on one side, then buzzes on the other side. And then sometimes it can be a tone. Excuse me. It can be a tone that goes off in that same on that same thing if you're holding them. So you hear the tone on one side and the other because you're holding them in different hands. What this does is it helps to rewire your brain. And what you do is you go into the memories with somebody who's a professional. And as you're going through those memories, it begins to lessen the emotion that you feel when you think of this memory. Okay? And what that does is that helps rewire. It literally rewires in your brain the emotion that's connected to it. So if you had something traumatic happen, and I'm going to use an example of a car accident, although when we're talking about religious trauma, we're talking about things that are usually not of that nature. But if you've had something that happened like that, then let's say from a scale of 0 to 10, when you think about this, it causes you emotions in the sevens and the eights, like 10 being the highest. That is a trauma, that can show that it's like a trauma response. And so when you do EMDR, it helps revisit that memory, and it feels more like a 2 or a 3. And so all of a sudden, something that was incredibly emotional all of a sudden just feels like, yes, it happened, wasn't great, but it's not bringing the body reaction almost like to you. And so that's one of the reasons that, so I like EMDR for the after effect, not for the doing it. I absolutely hate doing EMDR because it means diving into old emotions and diving into old experiences that have happened. And even for somebody who is sitting and talking about a high level of trauma that I've been through, it still brings up things for me that I'm still working on processing. And, the thing about healing is that it is an ongoing process. And you could be doing fabulous for 2 years, and then all of a sudden something comes up, and that feeling makes you go like you haven't done anything, and you get this lie in your head like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I feel like I did the day after I got out of this experience. And it's this, all these emotions that come with it, that it's like you haven't done a lot of work. And you have to remind yourself, like, you're on a journey and you are doing the work and you're going to get there. And just because you're having a bad day, or you're in the middle of some stuff that happened, or something's been triggered, doesn't mean that you're not on the right path. And it doesn't mean you're not doing an amazing job. It just means that maybe because you're doing so well, this little thing came up because it's safe now for you to deal with it. And so I like to look at things that when these things come up, it's because I have built such a safe space for myself that my body's like, okay, like, here you go. Here's something that's still holding you back. And if you give it the time and the energy to process it, it won't hold you back anymore. But the beautiful thing is that you're in a good place to be able to work on that experience. So thought I would start off there today. Today we are going to dive into the last one. We talked about like the dynamics of what dating was like in the cult. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what happened after that. We're going to talk about dating. We're going to talk about my inheritance. That'll be interesting. We're also going to talk about the gaslighting of bringing people in, the proselytizing nature. Because there was always this kind of like way of like luring men into the cult. It was very strange. And it's like, it was so unspoken. And so we're going to put some words to it today, or I'm going to talk about it. So anyway, welcome. Let's get into it. So dating was always, and I kind of went over this in the last episode, and I know it was last season, so if you need to go refresh yourself, it was quite a while ago, but I talked about, there was this expectation because I was to this point that there was nobody there was no men who were single. I believe there was only single women at this point. There wasn't enough men to go around, basically. And so because of that, there was always this pushing to find somebody that you could bring into the cult. And it was always like of the world, but not in the world, or in the world, but not of the world. So there was this idea that we were supposed to be in and around and do things normal that normal people did, but always bring it back to the faith and Duran and the camps, and like that was always the thing. So it was at that time, like, I had finished going to school to become a nail tech, and that was my way to be able to make money for my family. and which was me as a single mother with two kids, right? And I was completely uneducated about finance. Completely uneducated about finance. I didn't know how much money I needed to make. I didn't understand really how to pay bills. I was a single mother with two kids, and I had gotten a car because I got divorced, and I would make payments on that. Like, I knew how to pay the power bill in the house and things of that nature. But also at the time, like, I'm living in my parents' house. They had a home in Mesa, but they were living outside of Payson, which is where they had another house. And I'm living in this house, and at different times different people lived with me, but there was times when it was mostly me alone. And the expectation is I'm supposed to pay all the bills except for the mortgage on the house, which kind of sounds nice, right? But at the same time, like, I'm a single mom, I'm trying to figure out daycare, and I'm poverty level income. I'm had gone from waiting tables to becoming a nail tech, and I'm making enough to barely get by. Now, there were some processes at the time, and there was always this pinning against each other of me and my siblings. There was always the who got this and who got what type of thing. And it was very manipulated by the camps. And I think it kept all of us from never really being close with each other, which is something that I still regret and have pain over, because I love my siblings very much. And the way that we were pitted against each other was cruel. But there's a process, and again, Stephen and Trina, making shit up and manipulating people, decide that Megan's gotten different things, Matt's gotten different things, and at this time they decide that, my parents need to make a grand gesture to me. I don't know how it, and it may just be that I was manipulatable, manipulatable, manipulatable. I don't know if that's a word, but anyway. So Stephen Camp, in a process with my parents, tells my parents that they need to give the house I'm living in to me as like my inheritance before it comes. Now, this is a house in Mesa, Arizona, and it is a 5-bedroom home. It's got a basement, and 2 of the bedrooms are down there. It is 3 bathrooms, massive living room, massive dining room, huge kitchen. My mother had had the entire thing redone when she was living there to get her dream kitchen and her dream house before she got moved to Payson. And now this is my home. And so my dad has me paying everything other than the mortgage. And I mean, during the summer, the power bills were more than I could afford. Like, and just in case people aren't aware of like what poverty level income is, and we're talking like early 2000s, like, I think I made less than 20 grand a year. In fact, I don't even know if I was that high. And I didn't understand what a proper income was. But here I am also, I'm out there dating and trying to find the man of my dreams that Duran is going to accept, that is going to be happy to jump into a cult with me. And, I mean, talk about talk about fantasy island that I was living on at the time. So my parents gave me their home. And it was very interesting at the time. In my mind, my first thought was, I can't take care of this. I can't afford this. I can't, like, I remember just cleaning it on a regular basis wasn't manageable. And at the same time, people are still getting moved in and out of it to live with me or coming and staying the night regardless of anything. Like I had no control over it. So everybody could act like it was my house, but it really wasn't my house because it wasn't like I had any ability to make decisions about this piece of property. So I go to my dad at that time and I was like, Dad, like, like if this is really my home, I would rather just sell it and find something that I can take care of. Like, I would rather live in something small that makes sense. Like a 5-bedroom house with a single mother with 2 kids. Like, I would spend my weekends doing yard work and mowing the lawn. And we had some really sweet neighbors next to us, and occasionally I'd come home because they knew I was living alone during parts of that. And the man next door would actually mow my lawn. He was a sweet older gentleman, religious, and so it was his way of giving back was to help me, which was incredibly kind. Like I would just come home and my front yard was mowed. And so, but I'm out there and I'm working in Scottsdale. I'm a nail tech. I'm meet people here and there, dated here and there, like nobody to write home about. Like the person I presented myself as was very needy. Like anybody I dated, it had to be somebody who chose me. Like I was just waiting for somebody to have this like want me because and I believe I shared this in the last episode, like there was this whole thing about that the man chooses the woman and the woman leads the man to God. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, I'm just waiting for a man who chooses me. And there was this whole thing about not rejecting men. So me dating had to be like, I'd like to think that I would think it was funny at this stage, but I probably would be horrified to see that version of myself. So, there was some online dating. I would go do that occasionally. And then I ended up meeting a gentleman. I'll spare everybody his name, and we started dating. And when we first start dating, I'm going by all the things that I think, right? And he completely shows up as being a complete liar in the beginning. Like, I remember we go on our first date and I tell him that I want to get married and I want to have kids and I want, because in my mind that these are all the things that are important and spiritual to me and blah, 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 blah. And he tells me yes to everything. And it wasn't until a week or two later that he basically said he had been lying about all of it. But then by then, I feel like I'm in enough that I still have to, make something work here. And I'm not supposed to reject people. I'm not supposed to reject a man. A man who is in love or interested in me, I can't reject them. So I'm just like completely allowing this dysfunction to continue. And this was probably around 2006, 2007, because during that time period, because it was right before the crash, right? And when the economy really started going to shit and the housing market, the boom of, the big crash of the housing market at the time. And so it started hitting his business. And then as a nail tech, my business started going down because it wasn't the first thing that women would cut out of their budget, but it was one of the first things. So I start losing a lot of clients. And I'm sitting and doing the math one day and I'm trying to figure out what it costs me to go to work every day. And I realized that what it cost me to go to work and what I was actually making, it was almost a zero-sum game. So all I was thinking to myself is like, how am I going to make this work? I also had desperately been begging my parents to let me sell the house. And then once me and him started dating, after a few months, I just moved in with him because I couldn't continue to take care of the house financially or physically or any other way. And I wanted to split the bills with somebody. And dating him was a absolute escape. Like, and there was always this thing, like Trina would always say, you're just looking for Prince Charming to take you away. And I think there was some absolute truth to that, but I think that this is the way that manipulation works. Like, the truth is, it was a cult. You would have been better off had you gotten out sooner, but they try to get you to buy in to why you need to stay and to make you feel guilty for having critical thinking skills. And so that was what was going on at the time. Is I was being made to feel guilty about having critical thinking skills. And so I kept trying to be in denial that I would be doing that. When the reality was, when there was things happening, I was like off to the lake with him, anything. And I would take my kids, and like it was a really nice break where I was still involved in everything, but I was just a little bit farther away, and I kind of just had my own life going on. And I, my kids were in a public school, which was really nice, so they weren't involved in any of the other schools. They were actually thriving and doing really well. And I was taking care of myself and having fun with life. I mean, I was in my 20s and I felt like it was a time that I hadn't been able to have almost. The problem was, me and him were never a good match. And so as we continued dating, I started to, like, we fought all the time. He'd, yell and go off about things like the kids leaving the lights on. Like, there was a lot of dysfunctional things there. And that's like kind of like barely touching the surface. He also was like the kind of guy that would like be looking at your friend's tits type of thing. And I would overlook that. So, other than the part of me that was escaping from the cult side of life, which was a huge gift, me and his relationship was always doomed to failure. And we ended up getting in a huge fight, and I packed up everything and moved out. And the only place I had to move was back to Payson, and I moved back in with my parents. Now, at the time, my mom needed a surgery, and so I was helping and taking care of her. But then the other thing is, like, it was very short before I was expected to start working somewhere. And I had already quit my job because I was either going to go back to school or find another job that paid better. So that hadn't been a huge issue, but I still needed a job. So then I get pulled in to start working at the school, the Shelby School outside of Payson, because they always need more teachers. And so now I'm helping take care of my mom during this surgery, and I'm working at the Shelby School. And then I had tried to sell the house because I was like, if it's mine, why can't I sell it? The house that was in the valley that my parents had given me. And then Steven decides he wants the house. So now the house is going to be Steven's, but he has to pay me for the house. So he's supposed to start paying me like $900 a month. And this is this financial agreement that I really wasn't a part of, but it was like he's supposed to pay me. Steven paid me one payment of $900. So that was how I had my inheritance taken away by Steven and Trina. Meanwhile, I'm now working at the school, making maybe $4 an hour. And then I also, like, that's not enough. So then I had to get another job. And I'm also still doing nails on the side for free for people in the family, basically, because I'm not really allowed to charge anybody. And nobody there paid me for it. So doing nails on the side for free, working at Cole's Ranch, which is a restaurant, to make a little bit of money. And then I'm working at the school. So now I have 3 jobs. 3 jobs. And I had my house taken away. And I'm living with my parents. So I think I'm going to end it on that note today. And we'll pick it up on the next episode. But I want to talk about another form of wellness. And today I want to talk about walking. And I think that sometimes we think of like wellness as the emotional, as the mental stuff that we do, whether, and I think that there's so many other things that are little tricks that can be really beneficial. And I think walking is a huge one. So I wanted to talk about that today. So first off, light is an antidepressant. And there's been a lot of studies on light therapy. You can actually go look this up, but I figured I would read a little bit about that today. Light therapy has been compared to standard antidepressants in clinical trials, and these have shown that light therapy is an effective treatment for clinical depression, not only the seasonally related variety. When full spectrum light hits our retina, the back of the eye that is the part of the brain, a signal is directly transmitted to multiple parts of the brain. Some of these areas are involved in regulating mood states, pain perception, and memory. Light also directly impacts our sleep-wake cycles, and these circadian cycles absolutely have an impact on optimal mood states. Optimal sleep and good mood are nearly always partners. So there's a lot of reasons why taking a walk can be one of the best and most beneficial things that you do. Light therapy, along with taking a walk, is really good. So the first thing is, if you wake up really early in the morning, if you can get that early morning sunlight, there is red light that comes out of the early morning sunlight that helps to regulate your circadian rhythms, which is what makes sure that you're able to go to bed at night. Our bodies are meant to be on a certain type of cycle throughout every day that is regulated by red lights and blue lights and different color light tones. And just because you can't see them with your eyes doesn't mean that there's not a factor there that's helping you. So getting up in the morning and spending at least like 5 minutes in the early morning sun, especially if you live somewhere that doesn't have it. So like if you live somewhere that has more clouds, then it could be as much as 20 to 30 minutes. It could be 30 minutes, minimum of, I said 5, but honestly it's like 10 to 15 is what you should actually get. That helps set your body to being trained for the circadian rhythm. If you can get it in the middle of the day, which is giving off less red light and more blue light, that helps to tell your body where you're at. And if you do it again around like evening time as the sun starts going down, that's the third time it can regulate you to make sure that you're benefiting from a circadian rhythm. And circadian rhythm is our natural rhythm to be able to wake up and go to bed. Okay? It's something that is set from when you are very young and regulates. But what helps regulate it is the sunlight. And it's very good on mood. The other thing about walking, though, is when you're walking, your eye does this type of REM type of movement. And what happens is the act of moving forward outside, it tells your brain that you're moving out of a situation. So if ever you feel stuck, one of the most beneficial things to do is just to take a walk. Like going for a walk tells you that you're moving forward, which means you're moving out of whatever situation. So your brain actually reacts to the movement of walking, thinking that So if you feel stuck and depressed and have anxiety or feel like you don't know what to do, doing something as simple as going for a walk, hugely beneficial. The other thing too is nature. So if you live in a city, we can talk about just, walks around the city, and it is beneficial for all the reasons I said. But nature walks actually is another thing that can help add, in addition to creating another level of calmness when you have stress, depression, or anxiety. So get yourself to some nature. Get yourself to a lake to walk around. And like in Arizona, we like next to me, because I'm around Gilbert, we have a nature preserve. And so I like to go over there and go for walks occasionally. It feels completely different. It's not the same as walking around my neighborhood. And I go on walks around my neighborhood a lot of mornings. And I started doing it to start resetting my circadian rhythms because I was having difficulty sleeping. It's helped. And so if you're having issues with sleep, if you're trying to regulate your mood, go for a walk. Go for a walk. And the other thing too is it's also so good just for your health. Like everything from weight management, like there's a lot of studies out there about the amount of steps that are beneficial to get in a day. And I think there's some old stuff like people thought you had to go harder, but walking and getting your steps on a daily basis really is a slow thing that adds up. And if you can do 20 minutes early in the morning, middle of the day, and towards the end of the day, you're probably going to get close to, depending on how fast you walk, close to your 10,000 steps a day if that's your goal. Like, it's very doable. So it has been a pleasure. Once again, thank you for listening to How to Leave a Cult, and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Please like, follow, and share, and see you soon.